I'm Will Harmes. Was born in Rochester, New York in 1929 and lived just south of Rochester all my life in a town of Caledonia, which is about 28 miles from Rochester. I was inducted into the service November 20th, 1950, and took my basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey. That training lasted until about January of 1951, and then I was shipped from my hometown after a little bit of a leave out to Camp Stoneman in California, and from California I went by ship to Japan, and then from Japan to Korea by ship also, and arriving there in Korea probably about the beginning of April of 1951. I arrived in Busan, and from Busan we took the Busan Express train on north, and probably we stopped somewhere about Chuncheon or up in that area. I can't quite remember where we were, but it was sometime in April, around the first part of April. When I arrived after the train ride, I was assigned to the 17th Infantry, the 1st Battalion and B Company, and I was a private at that time, and I was assigned as an ammo bearer in the 4th Squad, which is the machine gun squad. Right after my assignment, we were moved back for a couple of days, and then we headed back north. I was, of course, an ammo bearer carrying 2 boxes of ammo plus my M1 rifle and bandoliers of ammunition and things like that. And my squad leader told me to go ahead and find somebody, if I got tired, to carry a couple of those or one of those boxes of ammo. And I asked one individual if he would mind carrying one, and he told me, well, that's your job. And he says, it's your job, so you do it. And I kind of left him in the dust the rest of the day. And so we ended up somewhere around Huachan as we moved back north again. The first firefight that I was in was on a small hill, but there was quite a bunker at the top that the Chinese or Koreans were occupying. And of course, I was a machine gunner. And the machine gun, as I was firing, the machine gun jammed, and I didn't know what to do, but I found another one that would work, and I actually kept that the rest of the time I was in Korea. But myself and my assistant gunner, we had grenades rolling down at us, and one grenade came pretty close to us, and I kind of leapfrogged over him, and he leapfrogged over me, and we still managed to get behind a tree, and it went off on the other side of the tree. But that was my first experience with combat, and it's a feeling that you never forget. You have somebody that's trying to take your life, and of course you're trying to do the same thing. We lost 2 second lieutenants that day, and that was my first experience of knowing that you can get killed in that kind of action. The 2 second lieutenants that got killed were a couple of guys that had signed over. They had been with the regular non-com part of the unit, and they signed over for another 3 months and were given a battlefield commission. And as I said before, they're second lieutenants, and that kind of stuck in my mind that you know, your service time, it's a time to serve your country, but sometimes there's a time to go on home when you're ready. In the summer of 1951, I can remember one firefight or battle that we were in where A and C Company were attacking the face of the hill, and B Company was asked to go around behind the hill and come up from the rear. Which we did. Now, we were almost on the hill when all of a sudden some of our Navy planes came in to strafe and drop napalm on the hill, and we weren't aware of that. Apparently the communications had broken down, but I guess A&C Company had had problems taking their part of the hill. We pulled back in the road that was down behind the hill and a little stream going along the dirt highway down there. And we were waiting for them to finish with what they were doing on the hill. As the plane finished, they circled around and they came our direction, and we thought we knew exactly what they were thinking. They were thinking we were enemies standing in the road down there. And so quickly we put down our observation panel that we use so that the air can see where the friendly troops are, but it was so muddy that you just couldn't identify it. So each of us squad leaders, platoon leaders, etc., were wearing a pink neckerchief, and we took those off, laid them on the panel, and as the planes come around, they started their descent to come in and commence firing, we thought. As it happened, when they seen the panel, the first plane pulled up and the others followed behind, and they made a complete circle around and came over again and just rocked their wings a little bit to let us know that it's okay, we see you. And that, that was a pretty emotional thing for all of us. September 3rd of 1951, we were on a hill that eventually became known as Pork Chop Hill. I understand there were more pork chop hills, but that was that was the earliest as far as I know. We had, our whole unit had occupied the hill for a day or so. My squad and support people were assigned on September 3rd to a listening post, probably 100 yards or a little bit more in front of the MLR. And our purpose there was to identify any action of the enemy that we could see or hear or whatever, and send it back to the company commander. Captain Tracy was the company commander at that time. Sometime around 2 o'clock in the morning, between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, we did hear activity, people coming up the hill, all around us actually. And Vendel Sistik was on the phone, and he called in and told them that we had heard some activity out there, and that he thought it was time to come in, but we were asked to stay a little bit longer. About that time, John, I call him John, his first name is Vendel, his middle name is John, and that's what he went by in Korea. But Vendel was standing right up on the top of the parapet around there. There was a trench that went all the way around the little finger that we were on. And he was standing on top there, kind of silhouetted against the sky, and I could see him standing there. And about that time, one of the enemy jumped up just a few short feet away from him, maybe 5 or 6 feet, and fired his burp gun point blank at Vendel. And Vendel went down. I thought he was hit. Pretty soon he came around the trench, and I asked him, I said, Vendel, did that guy hit you? And he said, no, the SOB missed me. And anyway, at that point in time, we had told the command post that we were coming in. And that's what we did. All of us that were out there, we headed back to the MLR. And I immediately set up my machine gun, myself and Herb Gerlach. We set up the machine gun right on the very crown of the finger that was going down to the left, and commenced firing back in their direction. And we fired there probably, we fired until daylight, or until we were told to stop, that the enemy was no longer there. Once in a while we could see activity out there from the flares that were going up and rounds of mortar and everything that was coming in to help us out. But we fired the gun there that all evening. We had Lieutenant Earl Eidecker came up during while we were firing out into the night, so to speak, and asked us how our ammunition was holding up. And I said, well, I've got ammunition I haven't used yet, but that really wasn't true. We had about one box at that time, but A&C Company went to bat for us, and they started carrying up ammunition. The next morning, when it got daylight, I counted like 47 boxes of 30 caliber ammunition, 250 rounds in a box. So I guess you can figure that out on how many rounds went through that gun. But through that, we set the gun up by a stump. Somebody had cut a tree down right there and stuck a machete in the top of the stump. And the stump was just a few inches above our head. And the next morning, when it got daylight, the machete was full of holes, and the stump was all shot up. But myself and my gunner, we were, I guess, privileged at that time, and were allowed to escape that battle. So the way we knew they were coming up the hill when we were on the outpost is, as everybody does, they talk back and forth, giving each other directions or whatever. And also, the hillside was wooded, and so there were rocks there were twigs there, and so on and so forth, which gave them away. It gave away their positions, and that's the way the only way that we could tell that there was somebody there. They all, and even we, or whether it was World War II with the Germans or whatever, people talk to each other, and you can hear that in the night because it's quiet. There wasn't any activity from the air, any mortars or rounds or anything else falling, and so it's very, very quiet. And once that's broken, you're awake and you're aware. To tell you a little bit about the machine gun that we were using, it really was the light 30 machine gun, which they had two models. They had an M1 and an M2. The M1 had a neck down barrel at the end, and if you tried firing under sustained fire at any length of time, that barrel would burn out, especially firing at a burst of 6, which is recommended. It would burn out that barrel, and the barrel would actually collapse. The other barrel on the M2 was a solid barrel all the way out, and it was a little bit heavier to carry, but it would last a lot longer because it could take the heat and still not deform the barrel. So I think the machine gun itself, the body of the machine gun weighed about 25 pounds, and the tripod, of course, was less than that. And we shared carrying that. The assistant gunner and I, we shared carrying that and trade off every once in a while so that the other person could have a rest. The time near the end of August, August 30th or 31st of 1951, we were getting ready to attack what later became known as Old Baldy. There were several of them, I understand, later on, but this was the tallest of the Old Baldies. A&C Company was assigned to attacking the hill, and B Company was going to give supporting fire for A and C Company. We arrived there the day before the attack, and we had an open end down the line from us on a ridge going out to the north, or to the east, and we were told to booby trap that so that we would have some indication that somebody might be coming in from that quarter. And so I set out my white phosphorus grenade, got it really set up nice. Somebody spoke to me, and I turned around and headed their direction, but my foot got caught in the tripwire. Well, I think I broke all records for the 40-yard dash, because I was out of there in a hurry, because that white phosphorus is not good on your skin. So anyway, that's kind of some of the little things that happen in combat. Not everything is serious. Some things are comedy, and I guess it's that way with just about any activity in the service that you do. You always get a little bit of comedy out of it. in the winter of 51 and 52, starting with probably about Thanksgiving. I know it was Thanksgiving. We were over on the east side of Korea in the Punch Bowl. And the weather there is kind of similar to New York State, where I'm from originally. You might have snow one day and it'll rain on it the next day. Then you might have days that the temperature goes well below zero and everything freezes up. And of course, at that time we had the insulated boots, so that really helped a lot on the cases of frostbite that we had earlier. I had an incident there when we were on the Punch Bowl. It was around New Year's Eve. Prior to that, I'd been to Japan on my R&R, and I ended up with a blister on the instep of my right foot. And of course, I wasn't going to give up R&R. I thought, well, I'll go on sick call when I get back to Korea, which I did. And but it got infected so bad they wouldn't let me go online, and I spent about 20-some days in the collecting station. And so while they were giving me shots to get that cleared up. Well, anyway, our former medic was there in the collecting station. That was Jack Rogers. He was in the collection station, a gentleman by the name of Humphrey. And they were taking care of me pretty much. But New Year's Eve, there was a little partying going on, and I'm laying in my bunk. I was the only one in the collecting station. There was nobody else there. The collecting station, by the way, is a place where they bring wounded casualties back. They do whatever they can to get them ready for transportation back to the field hospital. Well, anyway, prior to midnight, I don't know which one came in first, whether it was Jack or Humphrey, came in and asked me if anybody got me something to drink. I said, no. And so they brought me in one of their little paper cups that they give you pills in, and so I had a drink going, and I heard somebody coming, and I put the drink under the bunk, and it was the opposite guy, either Humphrey or Jack, I don't remember which, and asked me if anybody brought me anything to drink. I said, no. And so they were supplying me with something to drink. So at midnight, needless to say, when the guns opened up all across the front, all of the artillery, everything opened up to celebrate the New Year, I was right out there in my bare feet in the snow, ready to take on just about anybody. And Jack and I just discussed this the other day, and it's something we both remember. Shortly after New Year's, probably near the end of January, I rotated. By this time, I'm a sergeant first class, and we were still, by this time we had left the Punch Bowl and we had gone over to Heartbreak Ridge. And we had only been there a short time when it was time for me to rotate. And I was saying goodbye to the company commander the day before we were going to leave, and I said, you know, maybe I should sign over for another 3 months and get a battlefield commission. And before I knew it, he had his hand on the phone, and I said, no, let's let that go. I said, it's time for me to go. We left that night under the cover of darkness with our weapons locked and loaded, and by truck across a valley that was pretty wide open with no headlights on, and the roads there, of course, were pretty winding, and most of them dirt roads. They were all dirt roads, and I managed to get out of there at that time. I felt that you have mixed feelings. You want to stay and you want to go. But I felt it was time to go, and the Army said it was time to go. And so I came back, I rotated back to Japan, and then from Japan by ship to San Francisco. And that old bridge, the Golden Gate, looked just as good going back in as it did going out. And from that point on, I went back to civilian life and have spent my time in civilian life and worked for Kodak for 31 years and retired from there. And my wife and I are just having a good time. Over the years, when I got back to civilian life and raising a family back in New York, I was transferred to Colorado, and I've lived in Colorado since 1971. There was an experience we had one day, one weekend. My oldest daughter was up. She's a systems analyst, and when she's up, my wife and I, and her, they get on the computer and they spend the whole day on the computer. Well, they called me to the computer and said, would you know this guy? I didn't know what they were talking about. But there was an email there that had been in the system since 1998. And this was in 1999, but the email had been there since 1998. And the person wanted to know if anybody out there knew his uncle who had been killed in Korea. And his name was, the name of the person killed was Hubert Terry. And Hubert was my squad leader in Korea for a while. And this was news to me. I knew he'd been hit on up on Pork Chop Hill, but they said it didn't look like it was life-threatening, and he would probably recover. Well, the War Department apparently said that he had stepped on a landmine, and that was kind of hard for me to swallow. I wasn't sure of that. But as the story goes along, I immediately composed something for my wife to send back to this person down in Mississippi, South Haven, Mississippi, just south of Memphis, Tennessee. And immediately I got another answer back from them. Of course, I explained that he was my squad leader, etc., and so forth. But immediately I got a thing back from them that said that they really appreciated that, because they really hadn't, the War Department hadn't satisfied their curiosity on how he had died. But the thing of it was a special day. It was the spring of 1999, and it happened to be Easter Sunday. And they sent a message back that it was like a resurrection for them. Well, that started the ball rolling, and later on that fall, my wife and I went down to visit a daughter down in Alabama and made arrangements to visit Hubert's family in South Haven. And we did that. We had our RV, we got it parked and went over to their house. The house was full of people, and they had a banquet there that included, they had chicken and ham and roast beef and everything else. All of Hubert's brothers and sisters were there, the nephews were there, and the whole work. I kind of called it the Last Supper. I know it's in reverse, but it was there. They were finalizing Hubert's death. And the thing of it is, this was the first time all the brothers and sisters had been together in 35 years. And so, I'd just like to let everybody know that because somebody like Hubert aren't here anymore, they're not forgotten. We, and all of our buddies, all of the buddies and all of the guys that survived the war, have them in their prayers and minds every day, all the time. But I think the story was amazing because it really brought that whole family back together. So Hubert, even his spirit, so to speak, has kept that family together and pulled them back together. I think that's an amazing story.